Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the spot where leaders come to drive the freelance economy forward. So today we have Glen Hodgson, founder of Free Trade Europa, as well as the founder of the freelance movement. So listen, you've probably heard Glen in a prior episode. I think it was about a year or 2 years ago. He's one of our go-tos when it comes to legislation globally on the freelance economy. Legislation can be one of those black boxes. You know, how does legislation get enacted around the freelance economy? What's the current legislation like and where is it going? Is really the focus that we're going to have in this episode. And one of the things that just always blows me away is deeper than the actual law. Why are they written in certain ways? And how do individuals like us, how do we actually change this legislation in a way that's best for the freelance economy? At a high level, globally, legislation is in a bit of a reckoning. Right now, it's kind of all over the place, depending on where you are. Even within countries, states have much different legislations. So for example, in the US, California is much different than, say, a Florida and Texas in regards to how easy it is to freelance and to hire freelancers. Likewise, in Europe, if you look at the UK versus France, and that's where Glen is really the expert on what is the European legislation, where is it trending, and how do leaders like us get involved in enacting the legislation that we know the freelance economy needs. So, sit down, enjoy, and go drive some change. Real quick, before we get started, I want to tell you about Uncompany, the leading marketing and design freelance platform in the US. Now, Uncompany is way more than a marketplace or a platform. Uncompany is a frictionless freelance system. And what I mean by that is they have an on-deck service that builds custom freelance talent pools for you that you can deploy in seconds. So what does that mean? They don't just find you the right freelancers, they build you your own custom freelance talent pools that you can deploy in seconds. So I want you to go to weareuncompany.com right now and tell them Human Cloud sent you. All right, Glen, listen, this is I'm so pumped for this because you've already been on and you are going to be able to show off the incredible work you've been doing. Hell, man, the past 5 years, you and I have been just in the front of the trenches, getting our ass kicked in this space over and over and over. When people ask how it is like being an entrepreneur in this space, I'm like, it gets easier, but easier compared to what, right? You're always getting your ass kicked, but I wouldn't want to do anything else. But so listen, when thinking about you, when we first met, my brain went to, holy crap, finally someone that understands government and legislation and getting the freelance economy to be in the hands of every single individual. And so that's how I think of you. Anything government legislation, go to Glen. Now, timing wise, this couldn't be a better time. And so according to our data, 82% of freelance leaders feel like their governments are unsupportive or neutral, which is nuts, right? And 30% would say that governments are very unsupportive. Now, you, my friend, you have a petition that has over 12,000 signatures saying that freelance is a right. And you have the Platform Workers' Rights Initiative, which is you literally leading in the front, saying that freelance work is a ethical, sustainable model of work that every individual should have access to. So I just can't wait to catch up, Glen. Do you want to kick us off with for those listeners that are meeting you for the first time, a little intro on yourself? And by the way, listeners, watch the video of this episode because Glen's always better dressed than myself and everyone else. That's been a common thread, Glen. You're always very well dressed.
Let's go a face for radio, maybe, but maybe we have to make an impression. No, there's so much going on here in the European space, and it's kind of this I'd say steady evolution in terms of where we are at the moment. We're still sort of feeling the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that people were locked down, but also became more familiar with the technology, how they can use this, how they can work in a more remote way. And we're still feeling the aftershocks of this. And I think people, not just sort of the Gen Zs, millennials, There's much more of a group of individuals, older, across the sectors, who've got much more of a taste for the open talent lifestyle and what the platform economy and the future of work can deliver. And particularly by that, I mean sort of the digitalization, allowing changes to how, when, and where we work and earn money. So this is a crucial thing that we've got going on at the moment. The problem is that a lot of the governments, and particularly at the European level, some of the legislators, they got sort of their mindset is still very much a 1950s. 8 hours work, 8 hours rest, 8 hours leisure, as a mindset, and this idea of being able to have flexibility and choice hasn't really permeated. And the big thing that we did in terms of our petition was just to basically hold up the mirror to the reality of the labor force of today in Europe. People want to have that choice. They want to have that freedom. They're saying, look, don't force us down the 9 to 5 route. We don't want to be employed. We don't need protecting. We're not children. We want to have various roles, responsibilities, and projects. This is how we want to work. We don't want to go to an office 5 days a week and sell hours to one employer. Please understand us when we do this. We're not suffering. We're not needing saving from anything. And this is the sort of the big message more than anything else that's coming out. And also one of the other messages we're getting from freelancers is that in this age of layoffs and instability in the 9 to 5 sector, it's almost more stable and a better strategy to be hedging by having several projects, whether it's side gigs here and there, whether it's several passions that you work on and can earn money from. It's kind of this coming through the element that, look, I'm almost my own brand. I need to sort of sell myself, my skills, knowledge, and expertise. How can I actually monetize that as much as anything else? And also something, and you'll love to hear this, Matt, but you talk about the accelerated feedback loops, but this is really coming through loud and clear in a European sector sense. And this is across sectors as well, whether it's in the sort of the IT, healthcare. It's the fact that people are saying, well, look, I'm doing projects. I get instant feedback. I can learn, use that extra knowledge in my next project, and it goes so much quicker. I'm not waiting for a 6 monthly or an annual performance review to know how I'm doing. And people are seeing, in terms of their own skills, knowledge, and expertise, is actually growing exponentially because of this opportunity to work with different people, different projects, and be able to sharpen their tools as they go along.
So Glenn, there's so many directions that I know myself and our listeners could go from you,
Yep.
right? And I think, I'm going to give you two directions, and you tell me which one you want to pick. The first direction is going to be, how did you get into this space, and why did you
Yep.
stay? So that's one
Yep.
direction. The second direction, and we can do both. The second direction is, how does legislation actually happen? Meaning, does someone like you stick your hand up, write a white paper, and then all of a sudden every government has to listen to it? Like
Yep.
how does legislation actually get done? That's one of the things that
Yes.
I don't think most people understand. It's like that this magical black box, and then all of a sudden overnight, boom, GDPR happens, right?
Yeah.
It's like boom, there's going to be new AI regulation that's going to happen. And from a
Yeah.
freelance context, just to give you some from US context, is overnight the current administration is trying to put in classification laws that are basically saying everyone should be classified as an employee, and if you're classified as an employee, then you're given benefits, and then the employer has to pay a certain percent. So that's how it's handled here, and it's really confusing. But so you
Yeah.
pick the direction on how the hell legislation gets done, or how you got into this space.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I'm going to sort of fudge that and actually start with the first one and then bridge into the
Nice.
second one.
Nice.
So I'm
Perfect.
gonna have my cake and eat it in terms of the subject matter there, Matt. But no, I mean I got into this because I went through a very, very similar journey that other people were doing. I was working in the corporate world, doing a job. I think there's 3 stages. The first thing is a job to be able to get money, pay your bills. Then there's a career, which is a bit more joined up, and you do sort of a bit more grown up things. And then the third part is the sort of life's work. What are you passionate about, and how do you earn money from that? And it was that transition from sort of stage 2 to stage 3 that I thought, well, look, I've done this. I've got knowledge, expertise in what I'm doing. I was working with legislation in various organizations, but I thought, well, look, I know the sort of the legislation around sort of the labor market things and the technology piece, and saw what was happening with the sort of the labor market changes underway, but was a little bit of an early adopter, thinking, well, look, I don't need to be able to be in an office 9 to 5 selling hours to an employer. I can actually sort of do this in a different way, whereby I can leverage my skills, go out to the marketplace. I can back myself, and I think there's a market for the things that I can bring forward. So started out with Free Trade Europa as the think tank, and we did a lot of work on the platform economy and the gig economy, as it was called at that time as well. But really sort of moved very, very quickly into working with sort of freelancers like myself, because I never had a problem with the term gig worker, platform worker, freelancer, entrepreneur. For me, it's kind of you can use these interchangeably, and meeting so many cool, smart, intelligent people who are using their creativity and the knowledge to be able to earn money is a great space. And I think that sort of it was moving on from that, and I got sort of was working with some really interesting startups and larger organizations and platforms, and they said, well, look, no one understands what's happening, no one understands what we do. We're too small by ourselves. Could you actually sort of help us to bring together some kind of ad hoc grouping to be able to put across our messages and coordinate us? So really a little bit of a thinker and a ringmaster at the same time, but also someone to catch some of the bullets. Let's be honest about it. This is not a sector that encourages rainbows and unicorns. There's a lot of negativity around the sector. So we started the freelance movement to really be able to address some of these things, both in terms of educating the decision makers and opinion formers about what's actually happening, then actually getting out there and being a bit of a force for good in terms of lobbying on some of the legislation and policy which was coming through, and also creating a bit of a community and a space for companies, organizations, and freelancers to come together and be able to drink from the same cup and be able to buy products and services off each other. That was the 3 pillars of the activity. And the problem is that, moving on to the second part in terms of the legislation, it's a bit like, making sausages. It tastes good at the end, but you don't want to see how it's made. And I think in a European context, that's really, really how it is. I mean, we have the problem is that the issue, very similar to the US, we had in a lot of European cities, this idea of the image of gig workers, usually young immigrant men with these awful old battered mopeds, these backpacks, delivering food for very little money in the eyes of the general public. The media got on the back of this and said, right, the future of work is this. It's terrible. We need to stop it. So, of course, what happened was that the focus and the attention was on that grain of sand on the beach, as opposed to the beach itself, really ignoring the fact that the majority of technology workers are actually freelancers, healthcare professionals, people in the creative space, whether it's designers, architects, lawyers, but also musicians and artists who have been sort of freelancers in the traditional sense for a long side. And what we really wanted to do as well is actually show the depth and the breadth of what was actually happening at the moment. And even looking at sort of the European Commission's figures, this is no longer a left field niche activity. We're talking about 40 million people across Europe already who are either full-time or part-time gig freelancers, platform workers. And this is increasing. The conservative figures from the European Commission themselves says this will be over 50 million people by 2025. and that's just around the corner and growing very, very fast all the time. But the problem is that in terms of how the legislation came up, that this was a knee-jerk reaction first in terms of platform worker rights to say that this is terrible. We can't have people in Europe earning no money, no protection, no safety net. We need to help them. And of course, like everything in life, whether it's in the sort of the traditional sector, there's also people who are, maybe don't have the greatest situation. They need some support and they need help. The problem is what we've got a legislation proposal at the moment which threatens to throw the baby out with the bathwater and force everyone down the employment route. So it doesn't matter where you are, you will be forced to be an employee. And of course, the majority of freelancers don't want this. They want to pick and choose when, where, and how they work. And they don't want this. And we've seen sort of a great example from Spain here in Europe, who actually put this presumption of employment into the legislation. What happened? Less opportunities available, less money for the actual workers themselves, but also more corruption. What was actually happening was that there would be a license system. One person would get the license and they'd sell it out to 5 or 6 other people and force them to use that. Absolutely ridiculous. So I think it's a great example here in Europe, Matt, of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. The idea is to help workers and protect them, but the actual result of what's been put in place at the moment threatens to be the absolute opposite, taking the opportunity, taking the freedom, and taking the choice away. And we've been working very, very hard with at the national level, but also with other interest groups, managed to combat and actually strike down a proposal before Christmas. Another 2 proposals that came out in January and just last week on Friday to say that, look, we need to do this correctly. We can't just put something in place that's going to negatively affect freelancers. And then we've got the element now of the algorithmic transparency that basically it goes even further than GDPR in terms of the opening up the decisions that have been made by computers. There needs to be human oversight of everything that's happening. But of course, this lack of understanding of how the sector works means that the legislators move on and the implementation and the practical elements of this are almost impossible and unworkable for average workers, average companies, and everyone's worse off at the end of it. So it's a very negative piece. So that's why, going back to our first pillar of activity, it's the education. What is actually happening? What do freelancers want to see? And as we know in a European context, we're very quick to jump to the regulation button and press it. There's the old quote going around at the moment that the US innovates, Asia produces, and then Europe regulates. And I think that this is the setup that we've got to at the moment, that our competitiveness is going down. The real innovation is not coming from Europe anymore. And it's a broader issue. If we want to sort of move away from just being a pretty museum that Americans and Asian tourists can come and look at with no industrial base, we need to actually sort of get on the trends of what's happening now. And what worked in the 1950s and 1960s is certainly not going to be fit for purpose in 2024 and beyond. But we're going on to the rest. But this is the broader sphere. But it's really important in terms of what's happening with the changes in the labor market, and that the policy and regulation really needs to facilitate what's going on. We see the AI Act as well, which is trying to rein in. We never have this mindset of the legislators in Europe to say, let's facilitate this. Let's be able to utilize this as something for good that can cooperate with sort of the human talent to be able to make this forward. It's like, no, this is new. This is strange. Let's find a way to stop it. So it's very wrong-headed from the beginning in terms of how the legislators go about these things, Matt.
Right. And I wonder, Glenn, so, I think one of the toughest things in our space is work is just a tool, right? Like it's a tool to get something done. And so
Yep.
it's not like we're saying, hey, here's it. Like AI is kind of easier, and tech is generally easier to say, this is what tech is. And you can kind of put it in a box, whether it's cloud or different type of, like even like a social network is like, you can put it into a box. This is what a
Yep.
social network looks like. This is how to regulate it. But work, I mean, it's literally just a tool, it's a medium, and the end state means actually getting something done. And so, whether it's
Yeah.
full time employment, part time employment, 1099 independent contractor employment, right? Like, there's all these different models that we've used. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
we're just trying to get stuff done. So that's I think that's part of what makes it so tough. Now, I wonder from your vantage point, I wonder in you why is freelance adoption not uniform or proportional in every single country? Meaning, from our data, the UK, looking at Europe, the UK has the highest adoption rate of freelance
Yeah.
compared to any other European countries. Usually, then it's followed by Germany and France, and then typically maybe Spain behind. But then it kind of starts to look like everyone. So there is a pretty clear non-proportional adoption of freelance across Europe. Why is that? Why is there more freelance talent in France and Germany, and why is the most in the UK? How come it's not all just the same across Europe?
I think it's because the very different starting points that we've got. I think there's certain of the states, and I'd add to that Scandinavia and the Baltic states as well, which are very tech savvy. They're used to looking at digitalization first and digital first policies, and also the consumer market is actually sort of thinking about, yeah, let's utilize this. How can we use the sort of the channels and the tools to make life easier? Whereas companies are also thinking, let's look at the efficiency gains that digitalization can bring to us. So I think that's the starting point there. And I think there is this kind of sort of north south and also east west shift. But having said that, there is some of the Central and Eastern European states are trying to leapfrog a lot by actually sort of adopting digital policies. And I think this is something that is very, very, very good, and something that will sort of take us forward more broadly. But then again, we have the sort of the government policies, which are quite sort of slow and quite backward towards this. But at the same time, the population are actually using these things. So whether it's they're trying to find platform work in the UK while they're sitting in Romania, for example, this is much more sort of everyday practice as opposed to something that's a little bit strange. So I think that the sort of the people are there, while the decision makers and the regulators, they're still in an old-fashioned mindset. They're not really catching up yet. So I think that sadly the politicians, as opposed to being a facilitator, they're the one that have got the hand on the brake, that are stopping a lot of these natural things happening. But the changes are inevitable, Matt. They really are. It's just a case of how far behind we can fall, and how much you try and sort of delay the inevitable as opposed to stopping it. It's just a force which is gathering pace and gathering strength week by week and month by month at the moment.
Now, related to that, Glenn. So let's look at Poland versus
Yep.
Spain versus Germany. Let's use these three. Actually, I'll throw in a fourth. We'll throw in the UK. But let's look at these four countries. And if I'm going to hire a freelancer, is it the same laws across every one of these countries? What's
No.
No, okay.
No, this is the problem, and one thing that's happening now within the Platform Worker Rights Directive, there's the idea will be to hopefully have a bit more scope, and what we're pushing for with decision makers is that we'll have a set of criteria, and if 3 of those 7 criteria are met, then you're an employee. If they're not met, then you are a freelancer, you're an independent contractor, you're allowed to do that. And I think that's important, because at the moment the laws are very, very different from country to country. We have the openness. The UK is probably sort of on a sliding scale. UK is the most open. People are more free. Companies and organizations can sort of do the work themselves, or they can use an employer of record or a third party to be able to bring on the talent that they need. Much more flexibility and much more opportunities for the talent, but also companies there. Sliding all the way down to Spain, in that group, who basically don't agree with it at all. Very punitive in terms of the taxes, and also forcing people down traditional employment contracts. So they're the ones who've got it wrong. UK have got it right. Sort of the French have also got a very different approach, but an interesting one. They're very much more supportive of the labor market model for freedom, and just realize that they want to get people into the workforce. And the platform economy or freelancing is a way for people to get the skills and expertise and actually contribute. Because at the end of the day, governments have a vested interest in people paying their taxes and
That's all they care
for
about.
schools and hospitals. And if they're sat out the side that and taking some kind of fees off the state, then that's the negative piece. So they have the vested interest in getting people into the workforce and contributing.
Now let's talk. Let's try to get tactical with these legislations, because I think so. Very selfishly for the listeners. So in terms of our demographic, Glenn, the number one demographic of listeners is enterprise leaders hiring freelancers. So usually them hiring
Yes.
freelancers at scale, right? So 1,000 plus
Yeah.
freelancers. So they got a lot of risk. They got a lot of risk. Second is
Yeah.
the platform leaders like yourself. So these are the actual, talent platforms, and they're looking and they're saying, hey, our base is in Spain, or our base is in the UK, or our base is in the US, but we want to have coverage outside of just our region. But
Yeah.
it's complicated, as we're talking about right now. So tactically, what is different about, and let's use these four. What is different about Poland, France, Spain, and the UK? Do they have how am I going to get in trouble, for example? So am I going to owe taxes? Am I going to get sued? Like, what is different with all these countries in terms of the legislation that they have for freelancers?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing in terms of Spain, you're not really allowed. You can have your own company, but as the freelancing model is very, very difficult to engage. You'd have to go through a third party, and it's difficult in terms of the taxation. Look at a country like Estonia, for example. The banks actually have a freelancer account, so I could do work for you, for example. You pay me. The bank takes care of all the sort of the social security, all the taxation, and it's a very, very easy, simple system. So that's something that really facilitates freelance work and side gigs and these and people starting out in terms of doing side hustles, new projects and services. So that's the great models. If you look at somewhere like Poland, there's a lot of the platforms are going in there, but there's a lot of third parties, whether it's fleet operators or intermediaries that are involved there. So there's much more of a culture of you don't go through a platform directly, you go through an intermediary, and the taxes and the payments can be made through that. So there's no sort of one system across Europe, and this is why the legislation would be good. So at least we've got the rules of the road that everyone can operate in a similar way. You can earn money, you can pay your taxes, but also you get money off the back of this as well. But this is why a lot of the sort of the companies, that freelancing has not developed as much as it has in certain states in Europe, because of the difficulties. And of course, there's also the compliance issues as well. And this is even in the UK, a lot of worries about this, and also a lot of scaremongering as well. That HR departments and legal departments saying, well, if you hire a freelancer, we'll be uncompliant, and therefore we'll get these huge fines. We'll have to go to court, and we'll be wrapped up in red tape and bureaucracy for months and months. I think in a lot of cases, the problem is that the laws are very woolly on this. It's a real gray area as to what is an employer, what is an employee, what's an independent contractor, and what is a freelancer. And I think that this is the sort of really the blurred lines that are not making it very easy. One of the things that we think we should be quite good to get into is that if platform workers or temporary contractors want to be employed, they can put their case forward for that. If not, they can opt in or opt out of this. So say, look, I'm a freelancer. I'm going to work for Matt. I'm a freelancer. I sort of tick the box. Don't try and push me into an employment contract. I've got my own deal. I don't want to have all the social security and the holiday pay and the sick pay. That's baked into my fee that I'm charging you. So almost have it sort of black and white like that, a bit like we do with sort of cookies. You have this opt-in, opt-out policy as well, so that it will make things a little bit easier. Because at the moment, the problem is it's just a patchwork across Europe. And it really is sort of unclear as to what constitutes an independent worker and what constitutes an employee.
Right, right. So I want to get into what the tactical implications are here, and I'll look at it from a U.S. context, and I
Yeah,
can't wait to hear the European context. So here in the U.S., obviously we've external talent, and going down the line, external talent, contingent talent, 1099 independent contractors. This has all
yeah,
been here forever, right? We're talking 75 plus years.
mm,
Now, the implication of regulation is simply that it means it's there has to be someone in the middle, right? That is generally the implication, is that there has to be someone
yeah,
in the middle, whether that's a freelance platform, whether that's an EOR, whether that's a classification provider, someone has to be in the middle. Then the implication of that is that, okay, now this turns into a margin. So instead of getting 100% of the pay from the company, I'm getting 80% because 20% has to go to a platform. And then the more
yeah,
regulation happens, 10% goes to the classification, 20% goes to the platform, and then 70% to me, right?
yeah,
Now, I, I would say that that leaves room where the freelance economy will still go, right? It'll still grow. It's just that the individual freelancer is the one that takes the burden of it, and basically is paying
yeah,
for tax at the end of the day.
yeah.
Now, from a European angle, what are the implications for the current and the proposed regulation? And I do want to make sure I call out what's interesting is there are really successful platforms in Europe. And so if you look at
Yes.
Malt, obviously, if you look at Talmix, if you look at Distributed, if you look at Shakers in Spain, I mean,
Yeah.
there are really successful freelance platforms. And it does kind of remind me, Glenn, of at least I'll use my Silicon Valley roots. It's like Uber was totally illegal and they said, screw it.
Ah,
We're gonna make the
yes.
governments work around us because everyone loves it and society
Yeah.
needs
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah.
from your perspective, what are the implications of the current law, the proposed law for Europe?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that it is stopping the talent, it's stopping the entrepreneurship, and stopping the competitors of Europe at the moment. This is one of the things that we're seeing sort of time and again. It's not allowing sort of the creativity and the entrepreneurial forces to be let loose in the same way. And I think it's also tied into the worry of governments at the moment about, okay, if I want to get my taxes, it's easier for me to go to a bank or a GE or one of these big corporations and get the money out. If I'm having to go to each individual in terms of they're almost their own company, or the freelancer have to make sure that they do their taxes properly, can I get their contributions in the same way? They're much more worried. They think instead of going to sort of 10 entities, they'll have to go to 1,000 or 10,000 to get the same revenues back. And this is one of the concerns I think they have in terms of the overall shift towards the future of work, more independence, more of a distributed approach to the labor market. And that's offering a lot of concerns at the moment. But at the same time, the companies are demanding it in terms of the efficiency gains. Individual talent is actually demanding to be working in a much more I say a matrix style as opposed to a top down traditional entity basis. And I think it's really going to be, because going back to the Uber thing as well, I think that companies will be doing this, individuals will be pushing this. It'll almost be for the regulators and the governments to actually sort of catch up, and they'll be, I think in most cases they'll be dragged kicking and screaming into the future, but they will have to sort of realize that this is the way things going and be able to adopt the systems to be able to match the reality. If not, they'll get left behind. They will always find a way around it. It's I think that any policy or legislation that comes in, the platforms and individuals are usually 2 or 3 steps ahead at the moment. So it's kind of we want something to facilitate this change. If we don't get it, then we'll always find a loophole and be able to move around it. Sadly,
And what will be the loopholes and the workarounds? Does it just mean that there's more platforms? Does it mean that there's more classification providers? What are some of these loopholes?
yeah. Well, in the first case, it'll be good work for lawyers. So anyone who's a European labour market lawyer trying to unpick all the woolly legislation at the European and the national level to sort out a lot of these things in the courts, there's a huge there's a huge amount of money to be made over the next 5 years in this case. So that's the first instance. The second one will be, if they put in place a presumption of employment, what will happen? That individuals will set up their own micro businesses, and they'll be classed as companies, and they'll go round that route instead. A little bit more pain, a little bit more bureaucracy, but not too much of a problem. Or if not, they'll go to a third party who will be an employer of record, or some of these self-employment companies. So I can use them, pay a fee, I can use their VAT number, all my social security and things will be covered by that. So I'll be sort of like a part-time employee of that organization, and I'll use this. So all these workarounds we're seeing already coming into place anyway. And of course, the same time, we've got the push from the unions as well, who realize that their membership is dropping dramatically year by year. They're losing power. They're very keen to be able to push people down the traditional route so they can grab the membership fees. They realize that future open talent doesn't really have an interest in being part of an organized labor group. They want to have user groups, of course, to be able to protect themselves, but not a traditional union model, which is very ill-equipped for the labor market of today and the future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, let's how do we let's play devil's advocate. You ready?
Yep.
Put yourselves in the shoes. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a lawmaker or someone that's just getting introduced into space. Why
Yep.
why shouldn't everyone be a full-time employee? And why should I be worried about freelance? Because I can think of some reasons that freelance is really bad. But in your
Mm.
shoe, let's put ourselves in their shoes. Why not? Why not the freelance economy from a legislator's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, they can put this forward. The thing is that you need to listen to the individuals themselves. There are some people, and this has got to be totally respected, Matt, that they want nothing better than to do their job, go home, put their feet up, watch
Yeah.
Netflix, have their weekends free, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But people should have the freedom to choose how they want to do it. For some people, this is the worst thing possible. They're forced to have one employer. What about if I want to work for 2 or 3 companies, and the organization has a non-compete clause, or you're not allowed to do that? It's a crazy setup. So we need to sort of to really be flexible to what people want, not what we think would be the best setup. And also, there's other ways of actually being a freelancer. And I think that if your starting point is we need to protect workers, give them the safety net, give them the holiday pay, or give them the benefits if they get sick or injured. Absolutely, this shouldn't be a prerequisite. We definitely don't want to have a two-tier society where people are sat on these full employment contracts with all the benefits, all the juicy details in there, and the people who are on these precarious situations just because they're a freelancer. There's no material reason why a freelancer should be worse off in terms of the benefits and the things that they get. And that's basically sort of the focus of the social security systems, and the taxation, to be able to be tailored to the reality of individuals. I think there's no way there's no real reason why people should be losing out because they want more freedom and more flexibility. That's completely wrong.
Right. Right. Now, sort of last question. I want to hear how you think leaders should be participating, and
Yeah,
I do want to use it from the lens though of, like we talked about in the beginning, there's a lot of burnouts in our space, and I think it's because our
yes,
space can look sexy, but it isn't that sexy, right? It's actually a pretty
yeah,
simple space where relationships are more important than anything you can do tech wise, or
yes.
product wise. So, with that said, I want you to speak to the a little bit burned out founders that are already working 80 hours a week on their freelance platform, or they're a provider, or
Yeah.
they're a freelancer themselves. I want you to talk to them. How can we, and I say selfishly, how can we really help? What should we be doing to ensure that legislation is going in the right direction?
Yeah. And I think that the big thing is to be able to say to explain what your model is, and the real problems that you're experiencing. What are the roadblocks? What are the things that you're sort of suffering every day? And how could the policy or the legislation help? And I think distill this into the top three, maximum the top five. This would really help, because I think that what we're seeing at the moment is very similar problems across the board, whether it's a sort of a platform or a organization, digital company, in different sectors. A lot of the problems seem to be the same, and I think to be able to look at that is going to be important. And I think that also this element of, it's really interesting as well, sort of the whole sort of leadership model with open talent. Gone are the days of the command and control top down. It's much more of a matrix approach. And I think a lot of the individuals themselves who are leading the new organizations in the future of work need much more control in terms of soft skills. You can't tell people what to do. It's having sort of a few full employees. It's having some open talent, some contractors, some consultants, and putting in place the benefits, but also how do you work with these people? And it's new skills and new leadership techniques, I think, that are needed to work with a much more fragmented matrix style organization, which I think is the way organizations will go more and more over time.
Right. I love it. Glen, most important question is where can our listeners find you? And please tell us a little more about the petition and the work you're doing.
Absolutely.
So can hop on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll send you the link across to that. You can go in and sign that and protect freelancing in Europe on change.org. Also, the fact that you can get us on freetradeeuropa.eu. You'll find all our events that we're doing. We've got a road show all around Europe on future of work, platform worker rights, which is coming up. So love to hear from you if you want to be involved in this in some shape or form. Also got the Future of Work Study 2024, which we're already starting to put together the framework of that, and also get us at Trade Europa on X. You can also get us at the Freelance Movement on Facebook as well. So we'd really love to hear from you, and thoughts, ideas, criticisms. Throw it at us. We can deal with it.
Oh, I know you can. I think the only thing I know people won't criticize is your outfit. That one. If only legislators can take notice of that. Glen, thank you so much for hopping on, bud.
It's a pleasure, Matt, as always.